Earth had always been a peaceful planet. Its leaders had long sought harmony within their own borders, and across the stars the human race had spent decades building relationships with other civilizations in the galaxy. The years of exploration and the promise of peace had led them to this pivotal moment. Humanity stood at the edge of a new chapter, a proposal for peace that would unite the galaxy under one banner. This was their chance to reshape the future, a chance to end the endless wars that ravaged countless worlds. But it was a risk, a big one. Sending their peace proposal to the Galactic Council was not a decision made lightly. The Galactic Council was a vast and complex organization, a union of species far more advanced than humanity could even begin to imagine in terms of technology, culture, and military strength. The Council had its rules and its way of doing things, and humanity was still a newcomer in their eyes. Despite all of their progress, they were still seen as too young, too unpredictable, too eager for a role in the galaxy's great political theater, and so Earth's leaders crafted their message carefully. They reached out not with demands, but with an offer. They would help guide the galaxy into an era of peace and cooperation. They would share their knowledge, their resources, and their will to create a new order, one where war no longer ruled the stars. But the Council's response was swift and brutal. Their decision was not a diplomatic one. It was a dismissal in the coldest possible form. They rejected humanity's offer with an arrogance that cut deep. They told the humans they were unfit to participate in such lofty ambitions. Their civilization was too unstable, too new. They could not possibly understand the complexities of peace across such a diverse and dangerous galaxy. They were told to go back to their corner of the universe and focus on their own problems. They would have no place at the table of galactic power. The reaction was instantaneous. Humanity was stunned. They had expected some pushback, but nothing like this. The very idea of peace was laughed at by beings who had seen countless war civilizations rise and fall in the blink of an eye. They had been dismissed without hesitation, as if their dreams of unity had no value. Earth's leaders gathered in emergency sessions to discuss the rejection, but it wasn't just the politicians who felt the sting of the Council's words. Across the globe, ordinary citizens were outraged. The entire planet felt the weight of the insult. It was more than just a political failure. It was a blow to the spirit of every human who had hoped for something better. In every city across the planet, voices were raised against the Council's decision. Debates raged in parliament, town halls, and street corners. There were those who wanted to continue pushing for diplomacy, but they were becoming fewer and fewer as the days passed. Humanity's pride had been hurt, and their response would not be one of simple compliance. The people began to call for action. The leadership could feel it. The call for justice echoed louder. With every passing hour, something had shifted. Something deep inside humanity had awoken. Earth's military officials met in secret, readying their forces for a different kind of response. They began to mobilize resources that had long been kept in reserve. Their peace proposal had been rejected, but that didn't mean they had to accept their place in the galaxy as insignificant. Humanity would show them their power. Earth was not weak, not anymore, and it would never again be dismissed so easily. News of the Council's rejection spread across the world like wildfire. It didn't matter where you were from or what your background was. People from all walks of life felt the sting of that cold dismissal. The message was clear. Humanity had been told they weren't good enough to share the galaxy's stage, and the response was immediate and unrelenting. On every continent, protests erupted. Streets flooded with passionate voices demanding justice. Government buildings were stormed as citizens voiced their anger and their hurt. They had been ignored by those they thought would welcome them with open arms. Now they were left to decide what to do next. Earth's leaders gathered in private, tense meetings behind closed doors. The weight of the rejection hung heavy on their shoulders. There was no easy solution to this. Not anymore. The path forward was uncertain. The Council's decision had left them with little room to maneuver. Some argued that humanity should try again to appeal to the Council to show that their offer of peace was sincere. But as the days passed and the anger of the people grew louder, it became clear that diplomacy alone wouldn't be enough. Some of the more radical voices began calling for action. They urged the government to prepare for war, to show the galaxy that humanity would no longer be treated as a second-class citizen, to prove once and for all that they would not bow to anyone, No matter how powerful the alien factions were, humanity would fight back. They would defend their right to exist on equal footing or not at all. It wasn't just the government that felt the tension. Every corner of Earth buzzed with the energy of rebellion. People from all over the world gathered in their millions to discuss what came next. They were tired of being overlooked, tired of being underestimated, tired of being told they didn't matter anymore. The rejection had lit a fire in the hearts of every citizen. Even those who had once advocated for peace and diplomacy found themselves drawn to the idea of action. There was something deeply primal in their response to the Council's scorn. They wanted to prove that they were more than just a fledgling species. They wanted to show that they had the strength to stand among the stars. Military leaders were the first to act. They began mobilizing their forces secretly at first, pulling together the world's most advanced weaponry and technology. The plans were drawn up, the resources were allocated, and every soldier was put on alert. The first stages of a military response were already in motion. Humanity would not sit back and wait for the Council to change their minds. No, they would make them notice, even if it meant fighting for their place in the galaxy. As the weeks passed, the divide between the citizens of Earth became clearer. On one side were those who still hoped for diplomacy, hoping that the door to peace could still be opened, and on the other side were those who were ready to take up arms in the name of pride, in the name of justice. They were ready to prove that humanity could no longer be dismissed so easily. The decision had been made. Humanity would respond, and the entire galaxy would learn what it meant to challenge Earth's resolve. The first blow came when humanity least expected it, a sudden and violent strike against Earth's outer colonies. The alien fleets moved quickly, sweeping across the distant worlds humanity had established as outposts. They hit fast, and without warning. The attacks were brutal and calculated, designed to instill fear and break any resistance before it could form. The invaders thought the colonies would be easy targets. After all, they were far from the heart of Earth's power. But what the aliens underestimated was the strength and resolve of the people they sought to crush. Earth's military command was thrown into chaos at first. They hadn't expected the Council's refusal to lead to outright aggression, but within hours of the news reaching the colonies, a network of communication channels was established between military bases around the globe. The world's leaders knew that they had to act quickly. The aliens had made the first move, and that meant war. The first response came not from the powerful fleets of humanity, but from the small but fiercely determined colonial forces scattered across the stars. Those stationed at the outer colonies were the first to retaliate. The human soldiers on those worlds fought with a desperation that caught the invaders by surprise. They used the terrain to their advantage, launched guerrilla tactics that crippled the enemy's attempts to control the colonies. Though they were vastly outnumbered and outgunned, the human soldiers displayed a level of grit that could not be matched by their alien assailants. But it wasn't just the military leaders who were responding. The entire planet began to feel the weight of the conflict. The shock of the first invasion reached the hearts of every person on Earth. Citizens who had long watched from afar as their military prepared for the worst were now waking up to the reality that this war would touch every life on their planet in ways they had never imagined. Protests turned into rallies for action, businesses retooled to supply the war effort, and families began to send their sons and daughters to join the fight. Humanity was all in, and the cost of failure was too high. Earth's leaders quickly understood the scale of what was happening. The alien fleets had not just attacked colonies, they had made a statement. The Council's refusal to recognize humanity had opened the door for this aggression, and the first wave of attacks was only the beginning. The military had to respond in force, but it wasn't enough to simply defend. They had to strike back hard. Military commanders began to plan counterattacks with a speed and precision that shocked even the aliens. Their response was not just about retaliation, it was about showing the galaxy that humanity would never accept being subjugated. Earth's forces knew they could not match the invaders' numbers, but what they lacked in strength, they more than made up for with ingenuity. They began to fight with cunning and adaptability, using every available resource to create an unpredictable battlefield where the invaders would find no advantage. Humanity's response was fierce and unrelenting, and with each victory the galaxy took notice. But the war had only just begun. The aliens had drawn first blood, and they would not retreat easily. The next phase of the conflict would bring humanity face to face with the full might of the invader fleets. And this time it wouldn't just be colonies that were at risk. The war had come home to Earth, and it would take everything humanity had to fight back. As the war raged on, the galaxy began to see a side of humanity that no one had expected. The alien forces were used to fighting enemies who crumbled under the weight of their advanced technology and overwhelming numbers. But humanity fought differently. Earth's soldiers were resourceful and unpredictable. They didn't rely on sheer firepower alone. Instead, they outwitted their enemies, using guerrilla tactics and strategies that no one had anticipated. Humanity's military forces struck at the heart of the invaders' supply lines, using sabotage and surprise attacks that left the enemy in disarray. The aliens had thought they could easily crush Earth's defenses, but they quickly learned that the human spirit could not be measured by the strength of a fleet alone. The first signs of humanity's true strength appeared in the form of Earth's colonies, each one a symbol of the resilience of the human race. In the face of adversity, despite being outnumbered and surrounded, the colonists fought back with everything they had. They knew the stakes. If they fell, the aliens would have a clear path to Earth itself, so they fought tooth and nail to protect their homes and families. The colonies became hotbeds of resistance. Humanity's military commanders recognized this and soon began to coordinate efforts to push the invaders back. The war was no longer just about defending colonies. It was about making the galaxy realize that humanity would not go quietly into the night. The unexpected strength of the human resistance began to spread throughout the galaxy as more and more species began to take notice of humanity's actions. The Galactic Council, which had once dismissed Earth as insignificant, now found itself having to take a closer look at what humanity was capable of. They watched as Earth's forces mounted attack after attack, showing an uncanny ability to adapt to every new challenge that came their way. It wasn't just about fighting back, it was about reshaping the very nature of warfare itself. Humans had developed new technologies faster than the aliens could adapt to them. Earth's scientists worked around the clock developing energy-based weapons and defensive systems that could give humanity an edge in battle. The technology they created was not only cutting edge, but also unpredictable and highly effective. The invaders were soon confronted with weapons they had never seen before and struggled to defend against. But it wasn't just technology that gave humanity its strength. It was the people themselves. The soldiers who fought on the front lines were unlike anything the aliens had encountered. They were driven by a fierce sense of justice, a desire to protect their homes, their families, and their planet. They fought with everything they had, knowing that if they failed, it would not just be the end of their mission, it would be the end of humanity's place in the galaxy. The stakes were higher than they had ever imagined, and the resolve of the human race was stronger than anyone had thought possible. As humanity continued to push back the alien invaders, the tide of war began to shift slowly at first, but unmistakably Earth had gone from being a small and insignificant player to one of the galaxy's most dangerous forces. The invaders began to question whether they had made a mistake underestimating humanity's potential, and as the humans fought harder and smarter, the Council began to realize that this war was far from over and Earth was not going to be defeated so easily. Humanity had come a long way since the early days of the war. They had faced defeat and struggled against overwhelming odds. But now something had shifted. Earth scientists and engineers had worked tirelessly to develop a new weapon, something that would change the course of the conflict forever. It was a weapon that could turn the tide against the alien invaders, a weapon that would make the rest of the galaxy take notice. The humans had discovered a way to harness the energy from their own planet and turn it into a force unlike anything the aliens had ever seen before. The weapon was built in secret, hidden away in a remote facility deep within the Earth's crust, where the planet's natural energy could be harnessed. The engineers and scientists had spent months working around the clock developing the technology, and when it was finally complete, they knew that it could be the key to humanity's survival. This new weapon was capable of channeling immense amounts of power into a single focused beam of energy, strong enough to destroy entire fleets with a single shot. It was unlike any weapon the galaxy had ever seen, and its potential was limitless. The moment the weapon was tested, it became clear that humanity now had a serious advantage. The first successful demonstration of its power sent shockwaves through the military. It obliterated an entire battalion of alien warships in seconds, leaving nothing but debris in its wake. The weapon was devastating, and its impact on the enemy was immediate. The invaders, who had once believed they were invincible, now found themselves on the defensive for the first time in the war. They had been blindsided by humanity's innovation, and they were not prepared for what came next. As the military began to deploy the new weapon in battle, the tide of the war shifted dramatically. The alien fleets, which had once seemed unstoppable, were now vulnerable. The human forces struck with precision and overwhelming force, using the weapon to take out key targets and cripple the invaders' ability to fight back. At first, the enemy tried to adapt, but it quickly became apparent that their technology was no match for humanity's new edge. Each battle they fought, they were losing ground fast. The balance of power was shifting, and it was clear that Earth was no longer the underdog. The first major victory came when humanity used the weapon to destroy a flagship of the alien coalition. With a single shot, the ship had been the heart of the enemy's fleet, and with its destruction, the morale of the invaders shattered. Their forces scattered in disarray. Unable to recover from the blow, the human military pressed forward with renewed strength, striking key enemy positions and pushing them back to their own borders. The tide was turning in humanity's favor. News of the weapon's power spread throughout the galaxy as the alien invaders struggled to regroup and plan their next move. The Galactic Council took notice of what was happening. Earth had now become a force to be reckoned with. Their technological advancements and newfound power had placed them on the map in a way that no one had ever expected. The Council knew that humanity could not be ignored any longer. They had risen from the ashes of rejection and proven that they were capable of far more than anyone had ever anticipated. The weapon was humanity's greatest achievement, but it was only the beginning. The war was far from over, and now the galaxy knew that Earth was not just a peaceful world. It was a world that could rise to the challenge when it mattered most, and the rest of the galaxy was about to learn just how dangerous that could be. As humanity's military victories continued, the galaxy began to take notice. The alien forces that had once swept across Earth's colonies were now retreating in disarray, their fleets shattered, and their commanders scrambling to adapt to humanity's unexpected power. The invaders had underestimated Earth's potential, and now they were paying the price. But the tide was not the only thing shifting. As the war progressed, the galaxy's other factions began to rethink their positions. What had once seemed like an open and shut case for the invaders was now a battle with no clear winner, and the galaxy's fragile alliances were beginning to crumble. The Galactic Council had remained silent throughout humanity's rise to power. At first, they had dismissed Earth as nothing more than a nuisance, but as humanity's strength became undeniable, the Council began to worry. Their carefully controlled peace was being threatened by a species they had once written off as too young and too volatile. The Council's decision to reject humanity's offer of peace had come back to haunt them. Now they were faced with a difficult question: should they continue to ignore Earth, or should they try to reach out and form a new alliance before things spiraled out of control? As the war raged on, and the alien forces lost ground, some of the galaxy's other factions began to reconsider their stance towards humanity. Those who had once sided with the invaders began to question their alliances. Watching as humanity's resolve proved unbreakable, they started to shift allegiances, hoping to align themselves with the winning side. It wasn't just the military victories that were turning heads, it was the way humanity had handled itself. They had fought not just with strength, but with honor. They had fought for their survival, but also for the survival of the ideals they held dear, ideals that the Galactic Council seemed to have forgotten. It wasn't long before some of the smaller factions and neutral parties began reaching out to Earth in an attempt to forge new alliances. These species had watched as humanity took the first steps in the war and had been impressed by their resilience and their unwillingness to back down. Humanity had something that many of the other galactic powers lacked: a sense of unity, a sense of purpose that was unshakable. The smaller factions saw the potential for a new order, one where they could align with humanity and share in the strength they were now offering. But not all factions were so quick to jump on the bandwagon. there were still those within the Galactic Council who viewed humanity's rise with suspicion. They feared that Earth's newfound power could upset the balance of the galaxy, and they were not ready to accept that a younger species could change the way things had been for so long. They considered themselves the keepers of peace and order, and they would not relinquish their power easily. Humanity knew that it was only a matter of time before the Galactic Council would try to find a way to undermine them. They had proven that they could fight back and win, but now the real challenge would be keeping that power and shaping the future of the galaxy on their own terms. The military victories were just the beginning. The real battle was going to be for influence over the rest of the galaxy, and humanity would have to be just as clever in diplomacy as they had been in battle. As the alliances shifted and the galaxy's politics grew more complicated, humanity stood at a crossroads. They had fought for their place in the stars, and now they would have to fight for their future. As humanity gained ground on the battlefield, the Galactic Council became increasingly anxious. They had underestimated humanity's resilience, and now they were desperate to regain control. The Council's leaders had been watching the shifting alliances closely and knew that the balance of power was tipping in Earth's favor. The smaller factions that had once been loyal to the Council were now growing more disillusioned with its leadership. They began to openly question the Council's authority. Many saw humanity's rise as a new hope, a chance for a different kind of future, where peace wasn't just a distant dream, but a reality for all species. In a last-ditch effort to reassert their dominance, the Council called for an emergency session to discuss humanity's growing influence. They knew that Earth's power could not be ignored any longer, and they would have to take action before it was too late. The Council's representatives argued fiercely. Some wanted to use force to bring Earth back into line. Others suggested more diplomatic approaches. But there was one thing everyone agreed on: humanity could not be allowed to continue on this path unchecked. Meanwhile, on Earth, humanity's leaders had to grapple with their newfound position of power. They had spent so long fighting to prove their worth that now they had to figure out what kind of future they wanted to create for themselves and the galaxy. The war had taken its toll, but it had also given them a sense of unity they had never known before. Earth had fought not just for survival, but for the chance to shape a new future, one where their voice mattered and their ideals could thrive. But the road ahead was far from simple. While many of the smaller factions had rallied behind humanity, there were still those who resisted the idea of Earth leading the galaxy. The Galactic Council was one such faction, and they were not about to relinquish their power without a fight. The Council had the resources and influence to create a war on a scale that humanity had never seen before. But humanity had something the Council did not: a united front, and the strength of a people who had been pushed too far to back down. Now that they had found their place, they were unwilling to let anyone take it from them. Humanity's military had grown stronger over the course of the war, and now it stood ready to defend Earth and its newfound allies from any threat that came their way. But they knew that the real battle would not be fought with weapons alone. It would be fought in the halls of power, in the corridors of influence, where diplomacy would prove just as important as battle tactics. Humanity's leaders knew that they would have to navigate a complex political landscape if they were to secure a future for themselves and their allies in the galaxy. They had no intention of going back to the shadows, where they had once been relegated. As the war reached its climax, Earth's leadership had to make difficult decisions about how to move forward. They had fought for peace, but the price of that peace was steep, and now they had to figure out what kind of world they wanted to build: one where they could stand shoulder to shoulder with their new allies, or one where they would have to fight for their place. Every step of the way, the galaxy was changing, and humanity would have to decide whether it would be the leader it had always dreamed of being, or whether it would become another casualty of a galaxy that feared change. The Council's next move would be crucial, and humanity's leaders knew that they were on the edge of something far bigger than they had ever imagined. The stakes were higher than ever, and now the fate of the galaxy rested in their hands. The final confrontation was inevitable. The Galactic Council had made its decision. They would no longer stand idly by while humanity continued to rise as a power in the galaxy with their forces stretched thin across the stars. The Council knew they could not afford to let humanity continue its ascent unchecked. They would launch one last offensive to crush Earth's newfound strength and restore their own place at the top. But humanity had already anticipated this move, and their resolve was stronger than ever. Earth had united in a way no one had ever thought possible. The war had forged bonds between worlds that transcended old borders and old rivalries. The people of Earth and their new allies had learned to fight together, and with that unity came an unshakable determination. They would no longer be told that they were unworthy of a place in the galaxy. They had earned it through sacrifice and bloodshed, and they would defend it at all costs. The Council's forces advanced toward Earth. With overwhelming strength, their fleets were vast, and their ships bristled with technology far beyond anything humanity had ever seen. But humanity had the element of surprise on their side. They had spent years building not just weapons, but strategies that could outmaneuver the Council's superior firepower. Their military leaders had anticipated the Council's every move and were ready to strike back when the time was right. The first wave of the Council's forces came in hard and fast, but humanity's defense was stronger than they could have imagined. The war was not won in a single battle, but in the small victories that added up over time. Humanity struck quickly and decisively, targeting weak points in the Council's fleets with surgical precision. Each victory brought more and more factions to Earth's side. The alien species that had once sided with the Council now saw the writing on the wall and began to join humanity's cause. They too wanted a future where they could live in peace and under their own terms, and they recognized that humanity had become the spark that could ignite that change. It wasn't long before the Council's forces began to fracture. Their fleets scattered, and their command structure fell into disarray. The once unified front they had presented to the galaxy was no more, and humanity had proven that it was not only capable of surviving in the galaxy, but thriving in it. With each passing day, the Council's grip on the galaxy loosened, and Earth's influence spread across the stars. When the final battle came, it was not a battle of sheer force, but a battle of ideals. Humanity's leaders stood firm in their belief that the galaxy could be united in peace and cooperation, while the Council clung to their outdated systems of control and dominance. It was a fight for the soul of the galaxy, one that would determine whether the future would be shaped by old powers or by new voices ready to bring about change. As the dust settled after the final battle, the galaxy stood at a crossroads. The Council had been defeated and humanity had emerged victorious. But the true challenge was just beginning. Now that they had secured their place in the galaxy, they had to work to create a new order, one where peace was not just an aspiration, but a reality, where every species had a voice, and where the lessons of war could be used to build something better. Humanity had proven that they were not to be underestimated. They had shown the galaxy that they could rise to any challenge, and now they would lead the way toward a future where the stars belonged to all who sought peace and justice for themselves. Earth had not only survived the war, it had emerged as the beacon of hope for a galaxy that was finally ready to move beyond conflict toward a new dawn.